All right, folks, it's time for the Malzberg panel, and as you know, we have a lot to discuss. And joining us on the Friday edition of the panel, Larry Elder, radio host of the Larry Elder Show and author of Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. And Stephen Lesser, host of Making Sense with Steve Lesser, and he's also a Democratic strategist. And let us get right to it. And let's start with you, Larry, the resignation of John Boehner.
Yeah, I saw it coming. John Boehner has been pounded and pounded and pounded by the Republican base for, in their view, rolling over and playing dead on so many issues. The Iran deal, the executive orders on immigration, the executive orders on Obamacare, and the refusal in the minds of a lot of conservatives to shut down the government, to defund Planned Parenthood. I have a lot of sympathy for Boehner for some of these issues, especially the shutdown of the government. The polls show overwhelmingly Americans hate it, and the fact is that the government got shut down the last time for, about 2 weeks. It got reopened, back pay was paid, and whatever the issue was got funded, just as this one would get funded as well. So John Boehner, in my opinion, has been unfairly pounded about the avoidance of the government shutdown, but has not been unfairly pounded, for example, rolling over and caving in on the Iran deal.
Right. Well, and I would take issue. I think that, when he, after that incident 2 years ago, where they subsequently would win a majority, a landslide majority in the House and Senate a year later, but he came out and he said, I had to shut down the government because of Ted Cruz. When it's the president who shuts down the government, if you play into the media's narrative, it's only going to make it stronger. But let's go to Steve. Steve, what's your take? Pelosi came out, of course, and exploited it as a party in disarray, because they don't like women, basically.
Well, I obviously, with a lot of other Democrats, had a lot of criticism for Boehner during his tenure, but I will say that I think he was a good leader for the Republicans. All of this criticism that he's gotten for things like shutting down the government and the Iran deal, I think he wanted government to work from a conservative perspective. And I think that the Republicans in Congress, in particular, are going to be much worse off without him. Although I have to say, McCarthy seems like a pretty level-headed guy, but the way things are shaking out, I think he's going to have to look over his shoulder a lot, because they're putting it looks like a lot of Tea Party, Freedom Caucus folks in leadership positions right behind him. And to me, it seems like he's sort of going to be a caretaker speaker, assuming he's the one selected, because nothing's a done deal. But assuming McCarthy is selected, I have a feeling he's only in there for a short amount of time. And, within a year and a half, we're going to see a complete Tea Party takeover of the House Republican leadership.
But Larry, I think the emergence of Donald Trump and Ben Carson and Carly Fiorina, and to an extent, I don't want to get to Bernie Sanders, let's stick with Republicans, is a reflection of the dissatisfaction with the do-nothing Republican leadership. Not that they don't compromise with a commander-in-chief who is the most radical commander-in-chief we've ever had, and who says, when it comes to the budget and the debt ceiling, I will not compromise. They want more to be done now that they're in the leadership. So I think Boehner's, the criticism is fair, and I think McCarthy, might just be another Boehner.
Well, you touched on it, Stephen, when you said that this is the most radical president we've had. The anger is why this agenda has not been stopped. But again, when you have a president who's willing to veto, when you don't have 60 votes to stop a filibuster, there's very little that you can do other than watch this radical agenda piss off the Republican base. But you said something that was not fair, Stephen. You said that Obama shut down the government. He did not. Look at the Constitution. It's Congress that appropriates the money, and Congress that literally shut down the government. Obama said, I don't care what you guys have done, and of course he used the media to blast Republicans, but it's Congress that shut down the government, not the president.
But he vetoed the bill because he didn't like what was not in it. So push comes to shove, it's his pen that shuts it down.
Well, that's right, but one more time, it's Congress that appropriates the money,
right?
And when he vetoes it, then it goes back to the Congress, and they don't have they didn't have the votes to override his veto.
Right. All right. Well,
ultimately, though, Steve, you know what I would say is what us pundits think. It doesn't necessarily matter what the American people think, and I think the American people in general hold Congress more responsible when the government shuts down. I tend to agree with Larry here, but I think it's whoever the American people tend to hold responsible, and it's Congress.
All right, let's play something that Donald Trump said today at the Value Voters Summit, and he got booed. Let's watch.
So said, I mean, like you have this clown Marco Rubio. I've been so nice to him. I've been so nice. I've been so nice. And then, no, but he's in favor of immigration, and he has been. He has been. It was the Gang of Eight, and you remember the...
All right, Larry, he called Marco Rubio a clown, and they weren't, having it there. Could this be, the first of many such responses as time goes on?
I think it will be, because when people drop out like Scott Walker, you have to ask yourself, where will Scott Walker's money go? Where will his supporters go? Will they go to Trump? Assuming Fiorina dropped out after calling her a weak CEO and making comments about her face, will her supporters go to Donald Trump? Assuming Ben Carson drops out after calling Ben Carson an okay doctor and saying doctors don't create jobs, will his supporters go to Donald Trump? So maybe, just maybe, Donald Trump has hit a ceiling.
I don't know. Maybe, Steve, what do you say?
Every time I think Donald Trump has done something to hurt himself, you look at the polls 3, 4, 5 days later, and he's gotten stronger. He's gone up in the polls.
Absolutely.
So I don't think anything is going to stop. I'm on record as saying this pretty early on. I don't think anything is going to stop Donald Trump getting the nomination from the Republican Party. And quite frankly, I'm nervous about him against any one of the Democrats. It's a bad look, in my opinion, for any politician to go up against a guy who just says anything that's on his mind and gets rewarded for that. How are you as a politician?
Well,
how are you as being afraid of who you're going to offend?
Well,
compete with that.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting, and of course, the Boehner wild card makes the whole thing more interesting. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good weekend. Susan Ferricchio, Washington Examiners, next.